You're standing at the coffee counter, phone in hand, about to order your familiar caramel latte. Everything looks perfectly normal, but there's one thing you don't see. Your two kidneys have just sighed. No pain, no warning, just quietly taking on another day of overload. And if you're like most people, chances are that afternoon fatigue, bloating, and heaviness aren't due to age or stress, but because your kidneys have been silently enduring too much for too long. Every day, your kidneys filter about 50 gallons of blood. No breaks, no shifts. When sugar constantly floods the bloodstream, the kidneys are forced to speed up their filtration, processing things they were never designed to handle at that intensity. Imagine a water filter. With clean water, it runs smoothly for years. But if you pour thick syrup into it every day, what happens? It clogs, it wears down, and eventually, it fails. Sugar does exactly that to your kidneys, with one dangerous difference. You don't feel it. Kidneys don't hurt until about 70% of their function is already gone. By the time you notice swollen legs, crushing fatigue, dizziness, most of the damage is irreversible. What few people are told clearly is that sugar triggers a state called glomerular hyperfiltration. It sounds technical, but the reality is simple. Your kidneys are forced to work at maximum capacity all day long, like pushing a car engine into the red zone for years on end. Inside your kidneys are millions of tiny filtering units called nephrons. When they're overworked for too long, they begin to die, and once they're gone, they do not regenerate. This isn't a feeling, this is biology. But then the story takes a very different turn when you stop eating sugar. Not extreme dieting, just cutting out added sugar. In the first few days, your brain protests violently. Headaches, irritability, intense cravings. Many people describe this as even worse than quitting coffee. Why? Because your brain has grown used to being fueled by rapid glucose spikes. When that supply disappears, it throws a tantrum. But while your brain complains, your kidneys are resting. Filtration pressure drops almost immediately, even though you don't consciously feel it. After about 2 weeks, very real everyday changes start to show up. Less swelling, a lighter body. In many people, blood pressure drops without adding medication. The reason is straightforward. Sugar raises insulin, and insulin tells the kidneys to retain salt and water. Cut the sugar, and that command disappears. The kidneys let go. The body carries less burden. Few people realize that sugar is also a major culprit behind kidney stones. It increases calcium excretion in the urine. More calcium means more crystals, and eventually, pain so intense you can't stand upright. After about a month without sugar, the composition of urine begins to change. Fewer crystals, a markedly lower risk of stones. This isn't some vague detox feeling. It's something measurable in a lab. By the third week, a crucial sign appears. Reduced protein leakage in the urine. Healthy kidneys keep protein in the blood. Damaged kidneys let it leak out. When that leakage decreases, it means the filtration barrier is recovering. This is one of the clearest indicators that kidneys do have the capacity to heal if you stop injuring them. And there's a deeper layer. Inflammation. Sugar creates oxidative stress and chronic inflammation, especially in the tiny blood vessels of the kidneys. Long-term inflammation leads to scarring. Scarring means permanent loss of function. But after about 30 days without sugar, many inflammatory markers in the body decline. Along with that come side bonuses: clearer skin, fewer headaches, energy that no longer spikes, and crashes like a roller coaster. This matters because diabetes is the leading cause of kidney failure worldwide, and diabetes is largely fueled by high sugar diets. When you cut sugar, insulin sensitivity improves, pressure on the pancreas eases, and the kidneys are protected at the root. This isn't about clean eating for aesthetics. This is about avoiding a future tethered to a dialysis machine, 3 sessions a week, 4 hours at a time, with a dramatically reduced quality of life. 30 days isn't the finish line. It's proof. Proof that your body, especially your kidneys, isn't as fragile as you fear, but it also isn't endlessly tolerant. When you start to feel the difference in your energy, in that sense of lightness, in your lab results, the question is no longer, should I quit sugar? The question becomes, why did I ever think daily sugar consumption was harmless? You might still enjoy something sweet on a special occasion. That's fine. But if every day means caramel lattes, soda, pastries, the price doesn't come immediately. It comes slowly, very slowly. And often, by the time it arrives, it's too late to turn back. What makes this story truly frightening isn't that sugar causes harm, but that your body continues to function normally while your kidneys are quietly deteriorating day by day. In medicine, early-stage kidney disease is almost completely silent. No pain, no fever, no clear warning. People keep going to work, keep drinking their morning coffee, keep believing they're fine, until one day, a lab result shows that more than half of their kidney function is already gone. This is not an exception. This is an extremely common scenario. There was a study that followed thousands of adults who did not have diabetes, were not obese, and had no obvious underlying disease. The only common factor, a high intake of added sugar in their daily diet. The results showed that this group had a significantly higher risk of developing chronic kidney disease compared to those who consumed less sugar, even when age and body weight were similar. This shatters a familiar belief. If I don't have diabetes, my kidneys are fine. Biology doesn't wait for you to get a diagnosis before it starts causing damage. Take a very ordinary example. An office worker in their 30s, doesn't smoke, doesn't drink much alcohol, coffee with milk in the morning, soda at lunch, a sweet pastry in the afternoon to fight fatigue. No one would label this lifestyle as dangerous, but after a few years, blood pressure creeps up slightly, ankles swell in the evening, fatigue lingers despite adequate sleep. Tests reveal elevated microalbumin in the urine, an early sign of kidney damage. Not because of age, not because of stress, but because the kidneys have been processing too much sugar for too long. When this person cut out sugar for 4 weeks, no extreme dieting, just eliminating sweetened drinks and daily sweets, the numbers began to shift. Blood pressure dropped by a few points. Mild swelling disappeared. Most importantly, protein leakage in the urine decreased. This is something that medications sometimes take months to achieve, not because the body performed a miraculous cleanse, but because the source of injury was removed. Another line of evidence comes from kidney stones. In clinical practice, many stone patients don't eat excessively salty food and don't drink too little water, but they often share one trait: high consumption of sugar and sugary beverages. Sugar increases the excretion of calcium and oxalate in the urine, the two main components of kidney stones. When sugar is removed, urine composition changes noticeably within just a few weeks. This is why many urologists today don't only ask, "How much water do you drink?" but also, "What do you drink every day?" What's striking is that the kidneys respond very quickly to change, much faster than many other organs. Blood pressure can drop within 2 weeks. Systemic inflammation begins to subside within a month. Improved insulin sensitivity means the kidneys are no longer constantly ordered to retain salt and water. These changes are subtle, but over time, they accumulate into the difference between entering middle age with kidneys that still have reserve and entering it with organs that have already exhausted their ability to compensate. And here is the key insight that very few videos say out loud. Sugar doesn't kill the kidneys with a single hard blow. It kills them through familiarity, familiar fatigue, familiar bloating, familiar mild swelling, familiar dependence on something sweet just to get through the workday. When endurance becomes the default state, biology records that state and slowly adapts in a worse direction. 30 days won't turn you into a new person, but it gives you something incredibly valuable: honest feedback from your body. When your energy becomes more stable, when the afternoon crash fades, when that heavy feeling after meals disappears, it's not psychological. It's your filtration system finally working under conditions closer to what it was biologically designed for. And it's at this point that many people keep watching, not out of fear, but because they start to wonder, if such a small change creates such a clear difference, How long has my body been straining just to adapt to the way I've been living? And at this point, a very interesting moment often happens for viewers. Not when they hear about kidney failure or dialysis, but when they start examining the very small details of their own daily lives. The drink in their hand, the heavy feeling after lunch, the unexplained fatigue every afternoon. If you've made it this far and recognized at least one familiar sign, pause for a second. Hit like on this video. Not for me, for yourself, because you're starting to listen to your body instead of ignoring it. There's a biological truth I always emphasize to my patients and students. The body never reacts randomly. Fatigue is a signal. Swelling is a signal. Intense sugar cravings are a signal. We've just become used to silencing those signals with sugar, caffeine, and the habit of pushing a little harder. And the kidneys are among the organs that pay the longest, quietest price. They don't scream. They simply withdraw their capacity, little by little. If you're thinking, I only have a bit of sugar, it's probably fine. You're not wrong at this moment. But science shows that damage doesn't arrive in the form of eat today, get sick tomorrow. It arrives as days that seem harmless on their own, but become irreversible when added together. That's why cutting sugar for 30 days isn't a test of willpower, it's a measurement, a way to see where your body actually is on that path. So many people who try it end up saying the same thing. I didn't realize I had gotten used to living this tired. That's when they understand the problem wasn't a lack of motivation, discipline, or getting older. The problem was that their biology had been forced to run out of rhythm for too long. When the rhythm is restored, everything starts to feel easier in a very quiet way. If content like this makes you feel understood, explained through science rather than empty advice, hit subscribe. This channel isn't about flashy diets or colorful detoxes. We talk about what the body is actually going through every day, from a scientific perspective that's deeply grounded in real life. And if you think this video could help a family member or a friend who's exhausted without knowing why, share it. Sometimes the right video at the right time is worth more than 1,000 pieces of advice. Before the video continues, I want you to do one very simple thing. Look back at your day today. How much sugar did you consume without even noticing? And if you gave your body 30 days of rest from that, how do you think it would respond? Leave a comment. It doesn't have to be long, just honest. Those answers often reveal something important. You're not the only one living in a state of quiet endurance without realizing it. There's a detail very few people notice, but once you're aware of it, it becomes hard to ignore. The kidneys don't just filter waste, they also read your lifestyle. They register your eating rhythm, your sleep rhythm, and especially how much you rely on sugar to get through a normal day. In long-term studies, researchers have noticed a common pattern among people who consume a lot of sugar. High energy volatility in blood tests, alert in the morning, crashing by midday, needing something sweet in the afternoon, exhausted by night. And with every crash compensation cycle, the kidneys are forced to handle sharp swings in glucose, insulin, and blood pressure. Here's a real-world example from clinical practice. Two people of the same age, same weight, same activity level. The first drinks water, black coffee, and eats very little sugar. The second doesn't eat much candy or dessert, but drinks sweetened beverages every day. When kidney function is checked, the second person often shows an abnormally high glomerular filtration rate in the early stage. It sounds like a good thing, but in medicine, it's a warning sign. It's like a machine running faster than necessary just to compensate for internal damage. And when that compensation phase ends, kidney function tends to drop rapidly. What's interesting is that when these people reduce sugar, that filtration rate returns to normal. No more overdrive. This is one of the clearest pieces of evidence that cutting sugar doesn't just make you feel less tired, it helps the kidneys return to their natural biological rhythm. Many people are surprised to learn that kidneys prefer stability over high energy. They don't need you to be sharply alert all day. They need a steady rhythm. Another line of evidence comes from sleep. Sugar disrupts deep sleep, especially when consumed in the afternoon or evening. Poor sleep raises stress hormones, and those hormones act directly on the blood vessels of the kidneys. A loop forms. Sugar intake, poor sleep, stress, kidney vessel constriction, impaired filtration, fatigue, more sugar, cravings. When sugar is removed, many people not only sleep more deeply but also wake up less often at night to urinate, a very practical sign that the kidneys and endocrine system are working together more smoothly. There's also a small but very everyday detail. The color and smell of urine. When sugar intake is high, urine is often darker and has a stronger odor because the kidneys have to excrete a higher load of dissolved substances at once. After a few weeks of reducing sugar, many people notice their urine becomes clearer and less odorous, even if their water intake hasn't changed much. This isn't subjective. It's a sign that the filtration load has decreased. What keeps many viewers watching at this point isn't fear of disease, but the fact that they start seeing the connections between very familiar things: the sugary drink, the wave of sleepiness, the heavy feeling, the lab results. Science becomes compelling when it explains your daily life, not just what's written in textbooks. And this brings us to the key question for the next part of the video. If sugar doesn't just affect the kidneys, but also reshapes how your entire body distributes energy, then what happens to the brain, the liver, and hormones when you remove it long enough? In the next section, we'll go deeper into changes many people never expect, changes that make them decide not to return to old habits, not because of discipline, but because their body no longer wants to. There's a fascinating observation from long-term eating behavior studies that very few videos talk about. When sugar is removed for long enough, the sensation of hunger changes completely. It's not that people force themselves to eat less, but that hunger becomes clearer and more genuine. Before that, many people thought they were hungry, when in reality, their brain was demanding a quick glucose spike. When sugar disappears, that false signal disappears with it. The kidneys benefit directly from this, because every episode of eating out of craving usually comes with sharp swings in blood sugar and filtration pressure. In clinical practice, there are people who don't lose any weight after 30 days without sugar, yet their biological markers still improve significantly. This matters because it shows the benefit doesn't come from getting thinner, but from the body operating under less stress. The kidneys don't care whether you have visible abs. They care whether you're forcing them to process metabolic shocks every single day. Another thing that often surprises people is the sensation of thirst. When sugar intake is high, the body loses more water through urine because glucose pulls water with it. People drink more, but still feel thirsty. When sugar is reduced, that mechanism calms down. Many people realize they're drinking less, but feeling more hydrated. This is a sign that water electrolyte balance is being restored, a vital factor for kidney health that rarely gets attention. There's a small but very revealing self-experiment many people experience. Before cutting sugar, mornings often begin with a heavy head, a dry mouth, and a need for coffee or something sweet just to get going. After a few weeks without sugar, mornings feel more neutral. Not euphoric, but not sluggish either. Biologically, that neutral state is gold. It's when homeostasis, the stable internal environment of the body, is being properly maintained, and the kidneys are one of the organs most responsible for that balance. This leads to an insight that runs counter to what we usually hear. A healthy body doesn't always feel energized. Many people have become accustomed to needing stimulation just to feel okay, but biologically, that's a sign of being out of rhythm. When sugar is removed, people often feel a sense of lack at first, then realize they're no longer being yanked up and dropped down over and over again. The kidneys, cardiovascular system, and nervous system all prefer this steadiness. And here's the detail that makes many people decide to keep watching. This change often exposes an uncomfortable truth: that sugar was never just food. It was a tool for coping with fatigue, boredom, pressure, even emptiness. When it's removed, the body becomes calmer, but the mind starts to notice those gaps. And it's in this moment that many people understand that caring for the kidneys, caring for metabolism, ultimately means caring for how you live each day. In the next part, we'll touch on a question many people quietly think about but rarely say out loud. If cutting sugar forces you to face your real fatigue, is that a sign your body is getting weaker or a sign that you're finally seeing it as it truly is? And it's exactly at this point that the story needs to be closed with a very straightforward truth. No embellishment, no scare tactics. Cutting sugar does not make your life easier right away. It makes your life more honest. Honest about the level of energy you actually have. Honest about the level of fatigue you've grown used to carrying. Honest about the limits you've been covering up with sweetness. For the kidneys, this truth is especially important. Kidneys don't need motivation. They don't need willpower. They only need you to stop putting them into emergency mode every single day. When sugar no longer keeps forcing glucose, insulin, and blood pressure up and down, the kidneys return to their proper role, filtering, regulating, maintaining balance, quietly, without excitement, but reliably. And that's the kind of health that lasts the longest. Many people say that after 30 days, the biggest change isn't in their lab results, but in how they perceive their body. They know when they're truly hungry. They recognize when they need rest, rather than something sweet. They stop treating fatigue as something to push through and start seeing it as a signal that deserves respect. From a biological standpoint, that's the moment when the internal regulatory system begins working again. If you've watched until this moment, chances are you're not just looking for information. You're looking for confirmation that your fatigue, heaviness, and dependence on sweetness aren't personal weaknesses. And science answers very clearly. They are the result of a system that's been forced to operate out of rhythm for too long. The good news is that rhythm can be recalibrated. 30 days is not a lifelong vow. It's simply a pause long enough for your body to finally answer a question you haven't been able to hear. And once they hear that answer, many people realize they don't need to be forced anymore. They naturally don't want to go back. If this video helped you see your body a little more clearly, save it by subscribing to follow along with what comes next. Here, we don't chase health trends. We move slowly, go deep, and stay grounded in real biology. And before you leave, I want to leave you with one question. You don't have to answer it now, just carry it with you. If your body could speak, would it be asking for more motivation or simply asking you to have less sugar? The answer? Sooner or later, your kidneys will tell you.